All right. Well, welcome to our second community conversations in this three-part series. This is actually our sixth time doing community conversations. It's been 6 years of trying to have difficult conversations with one another in community in a way that is constructive and we can move forward. Um, just wanted to offer some context. So I'll start with myself. My name's Brianna. I use they pronouns. I am the director of programming here at the Uprise Collective. I'm very excited to be one of the facilitators today. I'll pass it over to Steph for intro as well.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Stephanie. My pronouns are she and her. I am the Uprise Collective's Director of Operations. Thank you for being in community with us today.
For accessibility, we have two interpreters that are on your screen today. We also have a captioner. So if that's useful to you, you can add the captioning at the bottom. And if there are any other accommodation needs, please go ahead and let us know for future. And then just for folks that aren't familiar with the Uprise Collective, we're a 501c3 nonprofit. We do equity and liberation work in the community, which looks all kinds of ways. But we really firmly stand in the both and category. So we believe that there needs to be systems change in our current systems to reduce harm that our communities are experiencing, while also building and creating outside of the system so that eventually those things can be replaced and recentered on our own communities. We also have a lot of different programming. This is Community Conversations. SELA is happening in November. We have our Civic Engagement Series that happens in March. So we hope that you all come back and join us for all of those things. For those that are joining us not today, but later and watching this on YouTube, welcome. This is an opportunity for us to have community conversations that are really grounded in who we are with folks that are doing on the ground work, that have different types of experiences, different lived experiences, and organize in different ways. And so that's what's really beautiful about this series anyway. Before we kind of jump into a bunch of other things, we want to kind of ground ourselves in the lens through which we do this work. And this is where Uprise comes from, and this is really where these conversations started. So we're going to just take a minute to relax, to deep breathe with one another, to relax our shoulders, to let our tension out of our jaws. There's a lot of things we do in the world. There's a lot of needs that probably we try to meet every day as community members for the ones that we love. And sometimes we need to remember to just breathe. We're going to do a land and labor acknowledgement. We like to do these because not as performance, but as a grounding. This is where we come from. This is where we hope to go. So Uprise is in the Portland metro area. Not everybody is in the Portland metro area that's on this call, but we'll start with our area. And we want to recognize those that have come before us that continue to do the unending work of resisting colonization since it began. And so in the Portland metro area, we recognize the Chinook, the Cowlitz, the Clackamas, the Kalapuya, and the Multnomah peoples that lived and loved and worked and continue to do so up and around the area that we now call home here. And we also want to recognize and call into this space our stolen, kidnapped, and enslaved African siblings who were brought to this country, whose stolen labor was used to build the wealth of this country while being systemically barred from retaining that wealth. And we really focus on recognizing these two communities because at the end of the day, this country and all of the systems and all of the work that was built on top of it comes from stolen land and stolen labor. And when we can start there, we can start to unpack things and be intentional about how we engage both inside and outside of systems. And that's what brought us to our conversation today. The system is fucked, and we're going to talk about strategies for unfucking it. And that looks all kinds of ways, right? So yeah, thank you for that. And you had such a beautiful way to explain community conversations. Would you like to jump in?
Sure. So, Community Conversations was born because when we think about social uplift work, we are thinking about something that is iterative. We are thinking about something that is endlessly complex. And we're thinking about something that looks different in different communities. It looks different when we do cross-community organizing. And it is a constant balance between inside harm reduction work to support our survival from within systems that do not serve us and are not built for us, and balancing that with outside systems, change work, mutual aid work, resistance and revolution work. And that inside outside balance is something that takes a lot of really focused intentionality and conversation to decode how we do that healthfully together, how we do that in a way that aligns with multiple ways of being and knowing and existing in this world. This work is messy. It's messy, messy, messy. So our hope with community conversations is that we support community members in building language around the things they feel in their guts and in their bones around this stuff, because it's complicated. And while our panelists today have done incredible community work, there's not an expectation here that anyone is an expert. This is just an opportunity to help articulate and build collective sort of knowledge and understanding around issues that affect all of us and around issues that we are all navigating together in the ways that we know how.
See, beautiful.
What can I say?
So we're going to ask you all to introduce yourself in the way that feels good for you next. Names, pronouns, cultural context, community role, anything you find important for folks to have context for how we engage in this conversation today. And because it's a conversation, you all get to decide how that happens. So you can popcorn around and share what feels good to you when it feels good to you.
All right, I'll come out of the chute. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Professor Steve McCutcheon of the Black Panther Party Alumni Legacy Network, and I'm here today by way of the Baltimore chapter of the Black Panther Party. I arrived in Oakland in 1972 as part of the consolidation of the chapters of the Black Panther Party across the country. And from 1972, after being assigned to central headquarters to work in the printing cadre, then to the model elementary school, the Oakland Community School in 1973 through 1980. I taught math and physical education there, eventually developed the martial arts program, the Oakland Community Learning Center martial arts program, which went on to become a centerfold in the 1975 issue of Black Belt magazine. From there, long way around, I wind up coming back to teaching the Oakland community, the Oakland public school system as a math intervention teacher, and then moving into high school at Castlemont High School, teaching world history and ethnic studies. Long way around, Dr. Ned and I came together. I was invited to, as part of the newly forming Black Panther Party Alumni Legacy Network, and we've been on the road since then, trying to connect and be sure that the legacy and history of the Black Panther Party has been presented correctly, and that our visions and mission have been interpreted so that we can continue to find our place at the micro environment of the communities and at the macro environment level of international and national activities. We consider ourselves as participant observers because we participated and observed the events, the dynamics on the social and political arenas, and we are able to interpret those things such that others approach us and invite not only us to participate in continuing the legacy of the party, but to honor the legacy and the history of the party in such a way that we can continue to present that legacy and history of the party. So the long way around, I'm here with Dr. Ned to do that. And finally, that in 1972, when John Seal first called and let us know at Baltimore that we would be out here in Oakland, he told us that we will only be out here for the season in California. So thus far, been here since 1972. This is 2024. If I come to find that California has the longest season of any other states in this country. Thank you.
Well, I'm happy to go next. My name is Ren. My pronouns are they, them, and I think, most connected with my Japanese American immigrant heritage. A lot of my ancestors were farmers, and so in the past few years, I've been getting back in touch with that. That's what I spend most of my time doing, is learning and practicing farming and gardening, orchard care, and that's what led me to join Symbiop Co-op, which is a worker-owned co-op that specializes in native plant restoration and food sovereignty. And a lot of this is a learning experience for me to just be trying to practice and learn. And so I'm speaking here from my home in the Cascade Foothills out in the forest, which is the traditional stolen land of the Clackamas people and the Malala people. And so especially in this specific ecosystem, I'm really focused most of my time just trying to learn about the ecology here of this place and do what I can through Symbiop to teach people about that and about the entire ecosystem, the soil, and how that connects to, colonialism. It's all exactly the same processes, but kind of starting that seed out with gardening and soil and food. And yeah.
I assume that I'll go now. This is Dr. Satoru Ned. And I want to say that this is wonderful that we have the opportunity to engage with those, as we call, intergenerational people who are addressing issues in their area. Feel like you're the person that's taking on the tsunami of what a lot of people feel cannot change. So I joined the party in 1968 after I was a member of Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. I had to be cutting school in 1967 in May, downtown Oakland, senior cut day, downtown Sacramento, senior cut day. And I happened to notice the governor being taken away. I looked at some people walking in the Capitol 200 yards in another entrance, and I followed them in. I had no idea at that point in time that it would change my life. Listening to these people who I didn't know, people like Bobby Seale, people like Emory Douglas, Bobby Hutton, coming in the Capitol, not dressed in black leather jackets, but there were only 5 original members. They were local in Oakland, and the rest were people from the community. And they never talked about the women, mothers who came with them. It was about being able to defend ourselves. Just like what was said before, the defense of good eating and food is producing our own. The defense of education is educating ourselves. Healthcare, prevent everything that we ended up engaging in. So I joined in 68. I was an athlete. I was running track and field and playing a little ball, but mainly track and field. And I ran with notables like Tommy Smith, John Carlos, the infamous gentlemen who made their stand with their fist in the air in the 1968 Olympics. I was also in the Black Panther Party in Sacramento in 1969 when our office was attacked by COINTELPRO, federal agencies, and how they decimated our breakfast programs and destroying the food and all those kinds of things. So then I was transferred to Central Headquarters, where I was part of the original security for Central Headquarters, but also I was part of a singing group called The Lumpen. A book was written about our work by Professor Ricky Vinson. It was a bestseller. And also I want to mention Professor Steve McCutcheon has a book out, We Were Free for a While. And the story talks about the influence that we had on music during that period when you heard people even like John Lennon and Yoko Ono sing songs like Power to the People, and how it was not only the Black community, but across the board, it was a way of educating people. I was also an instructor at the Oakland Community Learning Center, was also instrumental, as Professor Steve was, in working with the United Farm Workers, and also in our effort to bring people back to the importance of localized voting, which is a story in the history of the party. So I was an instructor at the Oakland Community Learning Center also. So I'm just highlighting, as Professor Steve did, some of the activities that we were privileged to be part of, and bringing our decades of knowledge and experience that we're here to pass on we're here for a reason, to pass that on to all those who are willing to take it and take that torch and move forward. We'll run with you as long as we possibly can, but we understand the dynamics that you're faced with. We were able to decipher the concept of the power structure and break it down to the people on every level. And I want to say the work that we do in the Bay Area, of course, the Ohlone territory, our brothers and sisters, and we have a long history with the Native American community, and also members working with AIM and Dennis Banks, and of course, Leonard Peltier, who doesn't look like they're going to release him at this point in time. There is so much. I also want to encourage everyone, you can actually Google, go on Google and put myself and Professor Steve's name in to get more information on the work that we did, because it's very vast in the Black Panther Party. And also the continuation of the work, our website, bppaln.org. Our Instagram is the same. We also have a presence on TikTok, Snapchat, and several other sites, YouTube. But the idea here is that we are just honored to be here at this point in time, that we can be that information source, because everything that we talk about is going to be based upon experience and documentation of the work, so that you guys can take that and make it 1,000 times better. And our concept is educate to liberate.
That felt really beautiful to hear. Thank you, all three of you. My name is Mick Rose. I use they, them pronouns. I am Diné, Omaha, and Pawnee. I grew up in my homelands in Dineta in the Southwest Desert of Turtle Island. It's also a national sacrifice zone, or was deemed one by Ronald Reagan. So there's quite a bit of environmental extraction and harm that happens there, which is why I don't live in my homelands. Consider myself a climate refugee, and have lived in the Pacific Northwest for almost 20 years. Really love living in this area and collaborating in Native community up here. I've worked in Native community this entire time. I've been blessed to as a teacher, as a grassroots organizer, as a mentor, as a mentee, sat at the feet of my elders, and I'm blessed to learn from them. I organize within the Native community at the intersections of being a two-spirit person, at the intersections of land and restoration work on land, and restoration work that has to do with environment and relationships between communities and people. I currently work at an organization called the Prismid Sanctuary. It was founded by Esperanza Spalding as a Black and Indigenous placemaking project. And what we do here is bring together Black and Indigenous artists and cultural workers, and we work at tending our intercommunal relationships and collaboration with each other and in all communities of color. And we know that tending those relationships is a sacred work. It's done in ceremony, it's done with intention, and not without, a lot of learning, mistakes along the way, and a lot of love. So that's what I currently do, and kind of what, brings me here today. Thank you for having me.
We are so excited that all of you are here. You all have such vast and different experiences. And yeah, as was mentioned, it's an intergenerational opportunity for us to learn and grow from one another and pull forward things that our ancestors taught us and figure out a path to intentionally engage moving forward together. And so we have some questions that we can ask you all. We'll start with a grounding question and then we'll go from there and see how it feels. But you all have such amazing skills and experience that, whatever you want to share is going to be worth it. So our first kind of grounding question is, what does your work look like in service to our legacy of community survival? And you've all touched on it already, but is there something that you want to touch on specifically around the legacy of community survival in the work that you do now? And as mentioned, feel free to just jump in.
I would be happy to speak, especially because when I was invited, Symbiop was invited to be on this panel, and I was, I volunteered, and then when I was told or heard that the Black Panther Party would be on the same panel as me and these other organizations, I would just I honestly felt very intimidated and a sense of, I think, imposter syndrome, not only for my own age personally, but the age of Symbiop as this organization that I think at the most we are, but maybe working towards the same goals on the shoulders of giants. But even then, it was just a chance, and I would say a good opportunity for me to think, really, what can I say Symbiop is achieving for this work, like true resistance and change in an honest and self-aware way. So I was grateful to really sit back and think about that. And I think a lot of it just comes down to education. That's a lot of what we're able to offer for whatever reason. I'm in a position because I run the social media that, people listen to us as a co-op, as a local garden shop, and we're able to take the time we have the privilege to take the time to explain things to people who haven't had it explained to them, concepts that are maybe very basic, but are very important to build off of. And then I feel that that is kind of what I'm most confident in, that the work that I'm able to do right now is to try to just be another source of knowledge and important concepts for the community that are just going to help direct people towards the much greater, larger information that they need to tap into. But and I can speak more in detail about those things, but that was just something that really came to mind, and this has been a big opportunity for me to step back and consider this for Symbiop.
Thank you so much for that. And I just want to give you an example. We also, one thing that we do is we have these educational walks in downtown Oakland where we end up at the African American Library and Reference Library Museum. We have these great talks about all the work was done, but we also deal with a lot of schools, and sometimes we'll have 9 and 10 teenagers, 15, 16, what have you. And the first thing of realization that comes to them when I tell them, and I remind them, if I'm telling them the story of civil rights in the South, I tell them that some of the first people to join those marches came from elementary and junior high schools. They would go to school and then they would come out of school and march. And their parents might not even know it. In South Africa, during apartheid, many 9 and 10-year-olds, young people who had that fiery spirit, which we say youth make the revolution. That was our mantra at that point in time. And the fact to see that and look at here, even everywhere in the world, where you have young people, even in the Gaza Strip, young teenagers and young elementary school. And you think about that when you see a 10 or 12-year-old being locked up for maybe months and years. And then the story of the Black Panther Party. When I tell people we had members, Mumia Abu Jamal, who's still locked up, Wesley Cook, joined the Black Panther Party. He was 15 and a half years old. The amazing response. The average age was 17, say around 17 to 19. Some of the older guys who were like Bobby Seale, oh, he's 29, to us at that point in time. But I want to let you know is that the fact that it was the youth who changed that dynamic. And you should be surprised how young people start opening up to us. Their true feelings, that brilliance comes out. I just wanted to say all that. You should not feel intimidated. That is exactly what we talk about. And you're right. The North Koreans taught us a concept called Juche, which means use what you got to get what you need. And what you think is change, revolution, revolving something out of the old into the new, and by different means, all kinds of means available. But that the fact is that what you think is revolution today may not be the same tomorrow. And you hit it on the money. Because today it is education. So much has been left out. We have youth making, a group of high school seniors made a video on the breakfast program, and we're going to be showing it all over. They showed it back east. It was amazing. And they said, because we weren't learning enough. For us to help change things and be that catalyst to bring the community together, we needed to know more. So what you said was wonderful, and it's on the money, but don't feel intimidated at all. We're here to embrace with you and work with you and pass on what we did and our experience in any way we can.
Right, Dr. Ned. And I want to go to you also and everyone else on the theme of surviving and being able to survive in the community. When we look back at the idea of presented to us by our chief theoretician, Dr. Huey P. Newton, who led us to understand that the Black Panther Party, in order to survive, as well as the Black, poor, and marginalized communities had to survive, we had to be able to understand the idea of survival through service to the people. This meant providing for the needs and wants, and also understanding the interests of each of the community, the neighborhoods in which we participated in, being able to provide the medical, educational, the food, the housing, provide at some level, at some iteration, the particular needs for those, either to be able to collaborate with different peoples, to collaborate on different problems that were brought to us or that we recognize. And we're in turn able to educate, bring people into a state of awareness where they understood what their conditions were as we saw them and identified, and as they saw them, and were able to work through those problems by us providing programs. And those necessary programs address the immediate needs. But we saw that addressing those immediate needs, that was not the answer. That was not a confirmation and an end all of the Black Panther Party, but what it was intended to do was to educate and elevate the community so that masses of marginalized poor people would be able to raise to a level where all of us, where all of the masses, the poor, working class, and the other awakened elements of society would engage in a process that would transform its society, not reform, not add a Band-Aid to society, but transform the quality and the quantity of services and ability to achieve life rewarding and life life giving elements from the society. And this was done with the tools that we had available at that time. And now with the Black Panther Party Alumni Legacy Network, with the addition of technology and the collaboration of others who are aware of the things that are happening now, we can work together on a more elevated level to identify the issues and approach them and address them as we're able to do from our perspective and collectively and collaboratively with all the others now who have coming together to take hold of the issues and move to some common ground where we can move further into a progressive society. So thank you, Ren, for opening the door and recognizing that you're not alone, and we still have those across the generations who are reaching out to us and with us, so that we can all move forward.
Mm-hmm. It's so beautiful to hear the two of you articulate like the work that you did. And we sit in that legacy. I community build in the legacy of the Black Panther Party and the American Indian movement coming together and collaborating for collective liberation in, the generation before me and my mom's generation and my grandfather's generation. And what's so special about Portland, and something that I speak about often when I'm introducing people to this place and these different spaces, is that we have dozens of Native community centers here that came out of that work, that movement. A lot of AIM members that were at the occupation of Alcatraz, that organized and walked across the United States and organized with the Black Panther Party, and everyone came home, and went to work. And so we are blessed to be in that generation of learning from them and carrying that work forward. And it looks different now. And the piece that I am working to bring forward with Esperanza in the work that we do specifically, and we know this to be true, and we know that the US government work to divide our, that collaborative work that happened during that time period. They worked to separate us, and it worked. That systemic oppression, the way that they, brought in people to break up that collaboration worked. And then people went into, your community silos, and there's still some connections, and a lot of people have intermarried in Portland. There's a huge Afro-Indigenous community of families that have intermarried. But the work that used to, I think, that I've read about and heard about from our elders, it's not as vibrant anymore. And so we're working to bring that back. How do we bring back Black and Indigenous people tending to our individual hurt or our community hurt on land and what that means, and then also together and having, really tender conversations. When I talked about, placemaking being ceremony, we make sure to bring in that element of being surrounded by spirit, because we know this work is hard. We know this work hurts. And we know that that's the unseen can help tend that as we move forward. And some of the conversations that we have, they're just so beautiful. We're ready. We were in that legacy. We're doing all this work in community. And so we're working to bring us back and knit that collaboration back into the fabric of our organizations. If something is Black led, how do we, I'm I guess I'm speaking like from some of the materials at Prismid and how we work is this project was founded by an incredible Black woman, musician, and at the heart of it, the intention was for it to be a land back project. And as I came on board as an Indigenous person, as somebody that's active in, you know, the land back movement and done a lot of activist work around that, I started to feel and have conversations and realize like we can't have land back without reparations. These things have to be co-stewarded together. The liberation is shared. We can't have one without the other. And so that's really where the foundation of our organizing work started from, and is still, you know, we're still in learning of it. We're still in service to that. Yeah, and I know that we are able to do this work because of people like you who founded, you know, who pushed back and did incredible work, and continue to. And yeah, I'm so glad to be here with the two of you, and just, I'm so interested in what you all are doing now in, you know, in collaboration with Indigenous communities and how that's moving in the Bay Area.
Mick, can I add to what you were saying? When I first came into the Oakland School District, I came in with the Office of Indian Education as part of the Oakland School District education program, and our staff consisted of Amelia Buckskin, who was Navajo, Evelyn Lamenti, who was Navajo, Susie Dixon, who was also Navajo, and John Sixkiller, the Cherokee. So we were the staff, central staff for the Oakland Office of Indian Education. And we were assigned to 3 schools primarily: Carl Monk Elementary and Skyline High School, and one of the Montera Junior High School. Then the concentration of our students were at Carl Monk Elementary, and this is where I was assigned. And 30% of the school population were Indigenous students. So that was my primary intervention math group up until 2004. But through that connection, that teaching process, that teaching and learning process, I interacted with the different students and their parents, and became a part of the cultural fabric there with the students and the parents and the extended families that were part of the Carl Monk family there. And the Hintel Child Care Center was right behind Carl Monk, which attended the preschool Indigenous students before they entered Carl Monk. So I was able to cross-connect and interconnect with the preschool students and their families, as well as the students arriving at Carl Monk. And this again went on to 2004 until the politics in Oakland defunded the Office of Indian Education. So that forced me to go school-wide in terms of my student population group. And but that period of time, that involvement and those memories there, they are indelibly imprinted with me. And since we've spread apart, we've dispersed, gone our separate ways since that period of time. Occasionally I run into students from Carl Monk, find out where they are and what they're doing. And sometimes we have the opportunity to share those memories. Some of them are involved in community activities. Others are involved in other aspects of their life. But we were able to talk about where the progressions were then, in terms of Oakland being involved in the well-being and survival of the Native American population in Oakland, in relation to the rest of the population of Oakland. And we still, that the change then, it was slow moving, and that the progress then of not only the indigenous population in Oakland, but as well as the rest of the Black, brown, and marginalized community has moved as slowly as the political processes would have them be. So again, those questions, those issues that were visible then, they still continue to be a part of the landscape, not only in Oakland, but other areas where indigenous and Black and brown and marginalized people exist, just surviving and making efforts, trying to make inroads, trying to develop those programs and projects and collaborations that can stabilize their communities and help all of us move towards a self-determination in the communities.
Wow, thank you.
Go ahead, please.
Oh, just just gratitude for sharing that. That's so beautiful.
And when we think about the Black Panther Party, we think about coalition, just the skill and intentionality of coalition building. We did have a comment in the chat, in the Q&A, about sort of the Black Panther Party and their work in the sick and disabled community, bringing food to folks in Oakland during the 504 sit-ins, and the opportunity to sort of build critical mass across communities, and to think about how oppression is manifesting differently in different communities, which then requires a different response. But then what are the threads that we can kind of build tapestry together in terms of sort of coalition-based resistance strategies? So respect. So knowing that, I'm echoing. Dr. Ned, did you have something to add?
In listening to that and what Professor Steve mentioned, what you just said was one of the keys. And I'm going to paint a little picture. I mentioned before how surprised young people are. There was a statement made, even in 1974, when Richard Nixon was president, there's an alarming rise of Black and brown and indigenous people coming on college campuses. We must do everything we can to get them off. He was making reference into, they made a statement, there'll never be another movement. After the Black Panther Party officially disbanded in 1982, they said there'll never be any more Malcolms, any more movements, any more mass demonstrations. And they did a great job in flooding our community with drugs. Every time there's an issue, that's what they do. But the hiding of information, I had a group from Florida, and they were in that African American Museum, and they were going around where we keep those reference books. You can't check them out. Amazing. Some of them go back 200 years. This is banned. That's banned. This is banned. So understanding the fact that that knowledge of young people coming together, majority of us, you had your Third World Coalition, you had your soldiers from Vietnam, you had our brothers and sisters in the community and working people. We all came together under a common bond and goal. But what happened was the fact that we were able to, a lot of people don't know about the Revolutionary People's Constitutional Convention, Philadelphia, 15,000 people, representatives of every organization, including the developing gay liberation movement, as they call it, women's groups and organizations. And we talked about it then, and we said, there are no boundaries. There are no communities. There are only territories or intercommunal. So the coalition building, but that knowledge that has been taken away, that they refuse to teach. If they even taught classes in every city, the history of resistance and struggle in Portland, the story of Oakland, California, it would all come up. So they understand that concept. This is not new in terms of the battles. We actually won battles in this ongoing struggle for self-determination, liberation. And as I was going to pose the question, in Portland, is there a process in place where they are learning that story? And most important of all, how we can work to connect that story on a national basis. Did you know there were people and heroes look just like you from your community? And let us tell you about the collaboration that's just not isolated in Oakland or Portland, but it was a nationwide movement of how we even came together. And we amazed people with the story of the young patriots who were from the coal mines of Virginia, Confederate flag waving people. How did we as young people come together and create that coalition? As Fred Hampton, Bobby Seale, we got from Bobby Seale, we said, we don't fight racism with racism. We fight racism with solidarity.
I love that we fight racism with solidarity. It's so beautiful and like simple and clear and gives us a pathway to move from. And just to answer your question, there isn't, at least in the Native community, like a place to go for that history and that education. And that's a shame. I wish there was more, you know, there's like smaller communities, community sharing, but not something that's like a, you know, this is where you can go to access that archive or those elders.
Dr. Ned, you are muted. Are you there? You are.
No, on Saturdays from 11 to 1, we have sessions we call Educate to Liberate. We cover all kinds of subjects. Like this we were dealing with the Latino Hispanic culture and their heritage and how it overlapped in the Black and Brown and indigenous community. So we would be more than happy on our end to present to that group of folks in Portland, in that community, the overall relationship of Black and indigenous people and the struggles that we endured together. Once they have that, then it's like we did work together, we did accomplish things, and they don't want us to know. And you're right. It's like I use the example of we're in Missouri and you say, what is that? That's a wheat silo. What's that? Oh, those are corn farmers. They all got their own little areas, but are they talking to each other, working together at this point? Nope. Well, we got to do something about that.
I just wanted to add, Dr. See, this society, the American Democratic Republic, this is supposed to be a participant society, participant being the operative word. And too many times, too often, different communities, we react to conditions instead of responding, engaging in understanding the dynamics of our community and responding on a daily basis, such that when these crises arrive, that we have structures in process that can transfer resources there to make them operative. This is part of what we did through the Black Panther Party. We engage with the community on a daily basis through our newspaper distributions and communications, through our door-to-door work, through our programs. We're interconnected. We provided information, received information, so we could act on what was operating in our communities. Much the same way as the Alumni Legacy Network does. We find the issues and questions, people approach us, and we respond in kind with ideas, or they can prevent events will be set up where we can present a forum where people can engage and participate. But sitting back and being forced to commit to action in the face of emergency, in face of a crisis, that is not participation. That is narrow reaction. And for us to engage on a collaborative basis, in order for us to move from being just mere survivors into people who are able to create and develop on our own for our purposes of self-determination, we have to become more participative in our own survival, in our own efforts to thrive.
It reminds me very much of, and Brianna, maybe you can help me with the person who sort of conceptualizes this idea of mobilizing versus organizing. We mobilize around issues, and that is in response to sort of manifestations of oppression that are happening in real time. Organizing is something that happens more deeply, it happens across time, and it happens with intention. Like that organizing and mobilizing are not the same thing. And the Black Panther Party knew how to organize and mobilize. I am going to be very honest in that I am just wowed and bowled over by the just incredible conversations that are happening. I am also doing my very best to stay present in this conversation as I am learning more and more about our guests today and the incredible work that you do, that you taught at Oakland Community School, that you were in the Lumpen. I play songs by the Lumpen for my students. Bobby Must Be Set Free is my favorite. But as we're thinking about the work, and as we're thinking about building organizing spaces that happen across community, across generations, in response to systems that are designed specifically to discourage organizing, to discourage education and knowledge production, co-created knowledge production. There are systems that are set up intentionally to keep us from understanding our ancestral gifts, our ancestral histories, that we are ancestors in the making, right? We have systems and institutions that interlock to keep us from that knowledge and to keep us from being together around these issues that divide us in ways that we can't see or perceive. What keeps you going in this work? What keeps you committed?
You got it, Doc? Stephanie, let me just address one phase of that. What keeps me going is what brought me into the Black Panther Party, and all of things that were around that stage there. Becoming aware of not only that position, that stage of my life, but slowly understanding that others had conditions and stations in life that either individually or collectively did not make for a healthy environment to grow, to learn, or to thrive in. As I became more functional in the Black Panther Party, as I became more aware of the needs and the interests of other parts of my neighborhood, my Baltimore neighborhood, and then understood that the televised conditions, the televised lives of people, that was not the reality that was being shared in East Baltimore or East LA. That is not the reality of West LA or West Baltimore. That is not the reality of West or North Philadelphia. That is not the reality that is experienced in the Arizona reservation. That is not the reality that people experience on an 8 to 4, 9 to 5, or whatever 24-hour cycle they are involved in. That the realities of life have more to do with the necessities of life: food, housing, shelter, education, medical and healthcare, justice and peace. Those were the issues that were more in tune, that define the reality of everyday people: paying bills, being able to pay bills, being able to pay the rent, being able to put food on the table for children and themselves, being able to put decent clothes on their back, being able to have the transportation to get back and forth, to obtain a job and hold a job regardless of the changing industrial engineering or technological changes around us, regardless of the political climate and the political mayhem that defines the economic and political structure of this country, based and built and maintained through racism and the system and ideology of racism. By beginning to understand that and climb to different levels of understanding through the years, none of this came easy. There was a slope that I had to climb to understand what I was doing and why. Why I was doing it, because I had to learn, because I had already opened the door. I had already breached that door that said, you are not by yourself. There are others there who are not seeing what you see. Go get them, bring them along. And those who see more than you see, catch them, stay with them, and find out what can be done. So I'm still in this to find out what can be done, or what can I do with the Alumni Legacy Network or otherwise.
Go get them. Thank you so much. I'm thinking too about Mick and Ren, and as we think about coalition work and how we organize, right? And thinking about the work that you do as revolutionary work, that when we think about land theft, when we think about climate degradation as something that is deeply grounded in racism and ableism, when we think about our disconnection from our art and our stories, that, you know, Prismid is so crucial in our area around sort of reconnecting us with ourselves and who we are. I'm thinking too around sort of what keeps you going within, again, the landscape of change work, because what you do is revolutionary.
We're still
To-
hungry.
I just want to say thank you, Professor. I want to tell everybody, of course, we're on tour, we live live, we had children, grandparents, but our fire of who we are and our understanding is greater, but it has not changed. And I also just wanted to add on to what Professor Steve was saying, what kept us going. One guy came to me and said, you know, you guys remind me of the Rocky series. I said, what are you talking about? He said they would try to beat Sylvester Stallone playing that part to the pulp. And at one point he'd stand up and say, is that the best you can do? In joining the party, it was not a picnic for many parents. Some parents abandoned their children. They talked about them. You had organizations like CPS trying to take away party members' children. You had them agencies going in and telling landlords, if you do this, then we're going to take away your ability and your property. They were telling businesses, if you do business with them, we are going to shut down your business. So this was the beginning of what we call early American sanctions. And we wonder why? Why? Because we had discovered through our work, and we're able to disseminate it on a collaborative basis to show everyone, look at the commonality of what is taking place. But I want to tell you guys the underlying concept. You know, beginning after that origin period, we went into the survival program concepts, and they began to attack us. What kept us going? A lot of people don't know when they would destroy a breakfast program and arrest party members, and it's open the next day or next couple of days, and they look up and say, who are these people? Well, that's the community that were participating in the program are now taking it over. So when people saw this, that's part of what kept it going, as Professor C said, bringing people along, but at the same time, the general community. How did we pay for those bail funds? Behind the scenes, you had Hollywood of the producers on the East Coast. You had Leonard Bernstein, symphony orchestra director, who was holding parties on Park Avenue, where liberal and progressive socialites were writing checks to the Black Panther Party. When we gave away 10, 15,000 bags of groceries, you wouldn't come to Oakland or be at Portland and say, there's not a chicken in Portland or Oakland, must be the Panthers. People like Foster Farms, major entities and businesses, as part of that collaboration and support, they saw the benefit of the work we were doing, and we were exposing America with the Sickle Cell Anemia Foundation. It wasn't a picnic. They just celebrated the 50th anniversary of the founding, which they do have a cure, changes your DNA content, but still, it wasn't a picnic. We would go out for sickle cell concepts, set up tables and tents. They would arrest party members. throw them on the ground in front of the cars, come and make a scene in front of shopping areas. It was no picnic. But we stayed the course because every time, because of our collaboration and roots we had developed of this is for you. Why you feed my child, Professor Steve? Because we care. You know what, ma'am? You can't feed your baby. You can't, you have no, you're not able to breastfeed him. You have no infant milk, nothing at home. We got to do something about that. Women and infant children. And it's all these concepts of the 65 documented by Stanford University, and that wasn't all of them, survival programs that were created by the Black Panther Party and the community. It shows right there that how we were able to do that under the duress of every agency, from the White House staff to the CIA, FBI, DIA, fire, every agency weighed in on us. So, yes, I'm not going to tell you that it didn't affect us. I'm not going to tell you that we didn't have self-doubt, that we didn't have fears. Of course we did. But as Professor Steve said, it honed us. And even if we want to, the people will say, where are you going? We got you because you have us.
And overall, when we speak in terms of the platform of the Black Panther Party, our visions, our missions, then so too do we look at the Black Panther Party Alumni Legacy Network. And much of the reason for our existence is still a criticism of the government, the structure, the political, the economic, and the so-called social arrangements that continue to find the class divisions among the many communities here. And when the party implemented different programs, and as we engage and participate in activities and events today, we are still criticizing. We are still criticizing the needs that are still unmet by the masses of people in this country. And from a speech that I heard back in the 1960s as part of what I include, if the Black Panther Party is a criticism of all the needs of the people whose services and needs have not been met, then we need to create those conditions. And through collaboration, we need to bring those projects, programs, and institutions to bear to bring our communities into beyond the threshold of survival. Bring them to the point, bring our people, bring our communities to the point, bring our locations to the point where people need not need. Create those conditions together. Put aside all the petty politics. Put aside all disagreements. Put aside those, come together on common ground and create the atmosphere, create the conversation, and create the programs, the projects, and institutions that are going to empower the communities, empower the individual. So the more that empowerment can be developed, and the more those needs can be met, then the more the needs decrease. The needs are met as a part of the engagement of participatory people from each community. We meet the needs, and at the same time, we satisfy the wants and desires of the community and the people who make up those different communities. That can be done by continuing to criticize U.S. policy, U.S. government, U.S. history, structure, and its intent to murder, undermine, and eliminate progressive people here in this society.
Mm-hmm. And I just hearing both of you, I think so much about how you're right. The conditions, you work to create the conditions for a different world. And those conditions are now like what we have are, the power to be in city government, the power to, we have a lot of like Indigenous community liaisons within different parts of city government and within different parts of, I'm thinking specifically about Metro, who manages the land. And if we are able to, as Indigenous people, as people that are oppressed, have access to the land directly and tend and co-steward, and it just gives us access to our healing. And that is something that I just keep thinking about as you're speaking, like we're in a different place. And it's because of that work, that foundation that was laid. And I feel so much gratitude for it. And just speaking to how I stay in it is knowing that I don't have to do everything. Like so much was laid out that now I get to choose the lane that I can give my passion to, that I can give my skill set to, and don't have to stretch myself in different ways. And there's so many of us that have access to this now. And one of the things that I do and have learned a lot from, my cultural background in tribe, and also from these incredible Black feminist writers, is somatic work and making sure that I can stay embodied and work on my personal healing so I can have reserve and show up for the larger community work, and collaborate with all of the other organizations that are pointing towards this work of restoration with land, with each other, with ourselves, and making time to do that is the only way I can stay in it. Yeah, so just gratitude, and I still want to keep learning. I really want you all to share with us that history and make those connections and find another time to continue that learning.
You hit it right on the nose when you talked about local folks. A lot of people didn't realize, even before the 1973 campaign for Bobby Seale running for mayor and Elaine Brown for council, in 1968, even when Huey was locked up in jail, justly accused of killing Officer Fry and wounding another police officer, which became the trial of the 20th century. It was an amazing thing, simply because even when he was in jail, he was being run for, I think, 8th Assembly District. I know at that point in time, in the beginning period, Kathleen Cleaver and Bobby Seale were being run for a couple of other state assembly positions. And that's when Eldridge Cleaver was in the party. We were running him on the Peace and Freedom Party ticket for president. So people would always ask, what is important? The right to vote? Should we vote? And we always maintain within your own particular area where you can control everything. And the idea is that you have knowledgeable, socially conscious, community compassion oriented brothers and sisters from every area. Everybody's my brother and sister. You are able to bring them to the table, and they begin to control the politics of the city, and most important of all, where the money is changed, and change concepts that are not working for the people. That process overall has been lost, and that is part of what you talked about earlier. Within that concept, not coming to the totality of control of an ideology of capitalism or supremacism, but taking and seizing the means of production, which are elected positions as far as we're concerned. So the story, as you well know, we didn't win, but the relationship that we had with the United Farm Workers, who Emory, former Minister of Culture, Emory tells the same story. It was a hot day. It was in May of 72, 73. They were coming down International Boulevard, 85th, where we had moved from Peralta Street, our central headquarters, to East Oakland. We heard this clamor, invited them into the office, asked, "Who are you people?" I'm Cesar Chavez, and we're the United Farm Workers. And it was composed, of course, the United Farm Workers, the men and women, indigenous folks. You had folks from the Philippine workers. You had all kinds of people working together at that point in time. So after about an hour, we closed the office and marched another 20-something blocks to 6118 International Boulevard. We call it East 14th Street, where our Oakland Community School, which was just beginning in 1973 under the Educational Opportunities Corporation. And we fed all the folks that were marching, and for 5 years, the rest is history. There is a book out called To March for Others. You Google it, and on the front it has a little emblem, a little cart with the emblem of the United Farm Workers and the Black Panther Party. Well, the process was, if Cesar, we had been elected, Cesar Chavez and the farm worker leadership would have been part of the city administration. The plan, part of the plan was to seize the public land, you know where I'm going with this, and create the public land where we would have fresh produce, and we would control that land where it would feed the total community. And then the process was to march across America, which even after 1973, we got a lot of Black mayors elected all across America, but to also create generations of wonderful folks who would say, you know, it's your turn. We've already prompted the community. They're ready for you to take over this other council position. So then you have a totally, what we call a people-oriented city government. We've always believed all the way up into the state, and we actually pioneered that effort of camping out at a politician's house. We know you got to come home, or we know you got to come to your office, so we'll be waiting on you. So local elections, and he didn't win, and she didn't get that council seat. We feel that we didn't have access to the votes. We had like 99% turnouts, and still a record for voter turnout in the flatlands in Oakland. But in 1977, we ran retired Judge Lionel Wilson. I think he served either 2 or 3 terms. But when it came to the runoff, the Democratic Party abandoned the campaign. So the Black Panther Party and the community ran the campaign and successfully, in the runoff, elected in 1977 the first Black mayor of Oakland. And when Jean Quan was mayor in 2014, she did a city address, and it surprised the police department and everyone when they had to stand up and applaud the statement she made was basically this: I want to thank the Black Panther Party for opening the door for women, for LGBTQ, people of color, and indigenous communities, everybody to be able to work in city government. And if it had not been for the Black Panther Party, the Oakland would not look like it did today, because before then it looked like a compilation of the Trump family and the Koch brothers. There were no women, there were no interest for the community on that area. So people always think Oakland, California, like a lot of there, no, it wasn't always progressive. But because of those very concepts that we mentioned before, we were able to bring the community into play. Now, I'm just going to leave it open. I know to vote or not to vote, you know, everybody's opinion on national elections is another thing. Not taking into account candidates versus another person, what you like about them, or because of the color of their skin. We're looking at the ideology and the politics of even today what is being carried out. We pretty much have seen it's about to explode. You know, the whole it's already a regional concept with no end in sight. And when you have a sitting person who's in control, I'm not going to mention names, who says we're still going to back you and continue. So these are questions that we ask ourselves. And I'm just going to open that up by asking anyone on here, does it make a difference that if Washington or who in there is running this nation, has it affected us locally? Has there been any concern for us, or are we even on the agenda?
Woo, that is a question. Before we move on to that question, with your permission and consent, I did see Ren unmute, and I want to make sure that we're able to get your voice into the space as well. If that feels okay, and if you consent to it, I did see an unmute happen there. So I want to hear from Ren sort of your responses to the questions and the thoughts that you're hearing, your locus within your movement work, and how you stay in this work, how you stay sustainable and in the community work that you do, just anything that you want to bring into the conversation.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, the thinking about the main focuses that Symbiop as a co-op takes is, one, as a worker-owned co-op, we are at least attempting to do something, create a more healthy environment. But of course, we still are within capitalism. We still are a business for profit. So that's a very, you know, it in many ways like a futile effort, but it also does have very tangible benefits for the workers in the community, because as sharing ownership of a business, we're able to make very different decisions. And I'll speak more about that later, but the other side is we're focusing on, you know, ecology, wildlife habitat, and, you know, food sovereignty, and, you know, food, you know, seeds and everything. And those are very, you know, equally massive and impossible kind of threats that are have been here for a long time, and are, so it's, you know, in that way, seeing the largest scale of soil loss and the, you know, the kind of theft of seeds by large corporations and imperial corporations, the lack of access, you know, apartheid, like lack of access to soil, lack of access to food. You know, you can have a food apartheid in so many places in America. And so these are these massive problems, mass extinction, climate collapse. These are these massive problems. But then I think especially at Symbiop, because we are focused at studying those topics, I think we know, and I feel more, you know, I'm very aware of the fact of how those massive problems are so directly connected to the smallest scale. You know, when you talk about seed sovereignty, to fight that, it literally is grow a seed, save a seed, give it to your neighbor, give it to your friend, you know, save it in your cabinet, don't throw it away, don't compost it, you know. And it may not feel like a big action, but those really small actions, they are the healing. And especially in the ecosystem, you know, I love to consider that it's like you plant a flower or something, you may notice that like a bee feeds from that flower. And you can kind of be like, I did it, I fed a bee, I helped that bee, but it doesn't end there. You know, it's like a spider may eat that bee, a bird like a sparrow may eat that spider, and then, you know, a hawk might eat that songbird that ate the spider. And so realizing how those things are connected in an ecosystem, you are able to kind of, I'm able to ground myself that even if it's at a very small scale, it is connected, it is part of a larger context. And to go back to the co-op, as a business entity, you know, it's a lot to try to even attempt to be, you know, being a business for profit, but while not taking advantage of ourselves as workers and our own labor and each other's. But there is a lot of hope that we are just one co-op, but, you know, there's a lot of potential and momentum right now for us to connect with other co-ops. And then now you have a coalition of co-ops, and that can be locally in a city, that can be across a whole country, or across, you know, multiple continents. You can have these partnerships, and that becomes something that is much more powerful and influential. And so I think that's kind of what is able to keep me going, is it's literally the fact that I'm looking at the larger phenomenon, that I'm able to look at the really micro scale of how those things are connected, and even just the smallest day-to-day changes and connection and collaboration and community is the groundwork that is, underpinning everything else. So
I have seeds from Ren, and it warms my heart. So knowing that this work can look like large scale macro policy work, it can look like mobilization, it can look like community education, it can look like long-term organizing. There are many, many ways that this work can sort of manifest. Back to Dr. Ned's question, are we on the agenda? Whose agenda? How does that sort of impact our work at the micro and the macro level, right? Like, are there ways to engage in resistance in a way that is independent of whether or not we are on the agenda? It's a fascinating question. I'm interested in folks' thoughts. And Dr. Ned, let me know if I articulated that question correctly.
Yes, you did.
Okay, beautiful.
And I just wanted,
Oops.
there we go.
Sorry
I
about
just
that.
wanted to mention here in Oakland, California, we are part of a project called Food Sovereignty. And essentially, the term sovereignty connects with our survival programs, which were meant, we always said survival pending revolution. When every community is thriving and interconnected and intergenerational, then that's when you see real change, when someone tries to take it away from everyone. But it's called the Deep Medicine Circle. I will send you guys the video. And it's 1 acre on a high-rise rooftop garden concept. But that's just the beginning, because the organization is working through the EPA because America made the mistake of saying food is medicine. They have this program like the USDA tried to say they had the breakfast program, but it's only very, very limited. So they're tapping into that. The city of Oakland is presenting a resolution to support that, not only there, but on the ground. If you notice, in most cities, they've taken public land and built unaffordable housing, right? And that land, usually, if you check, that's why we need folks in those council positions, in those local elected positions. That land should be used for the community. So imagine the city supporting that concept, but there's a huge, huge grant concept that's involved in this and working with them. I'm going to send you guys the video. And we mentioned already that this concept could very well spread to every state. In particular, we start with the Northwest. And the reason is because you're not going it alone. You're bringing to bear a vast amount of people, organizations, and individuals who want to see, because it's like this. I don't care geographically where you are. We are all one people. We all have the same needs. And we talked about that earlier when we said, what can get a person's attention? The basic things. When we fed the kids a breakfast program, they were going to school before the food and not paying attention. They might not have had a meal, maybe one meal a day. It was horrendous. So when they would go to school and not pay attention, get sent to the principal office, get expelled. But once we started feeding them, they started asking us questions. Then they wanted to learn and grow. They would still get sent down to the principal. Sometimes they get expelled, but it was because they were contradicting the ill information that they were getting. And they were learning a real story and information and history about things that they weren't being taught, and they started questioning. So what did we do? We said we have to create our own, initially, liberation schools or learning centers where we can teach our children those things. And I've said all that in everything that we did, even with the Black Panther Party newspaper, was a survival program and getting that knowledge out. But we always started with concepts that fed those children, as well as worked with the mothers, the root of the family, the root of the family tree. And people would ask us, why are you doing this? Because it has to be done. And we love you. It was that simple for us at that point in time. So I will send out that video. And that is part of the connection of being able to show people in area, look, you're not alone. look what's going on, and they want to support. Let's hook it up together. And that was one process that the Black Panther Party was very successful at.
All right, just wanted to add one thing with Ren in terms of what you're doing around growing products, that if you find a particular population of school students today, or maybe this generation, many of them do not understand that this was an agrarian society. Our indigenous family understand that. That's part of the roots there. Many of us, or some of us on my family, I know that my grandparents raise their own fruits and vegetables, raise animals to provide food substances that they needed, only accept certain accessories were needed outside of what they were able, my aunt and uncle, my grandmother and grandfather were able to produce, just the accessories, whatever, not all the things that are taken for granted today. Too often today in this generation in particular, everyone's got a cell phone. Everyone's got the latest in laptop equipment. Everyone's tuned into the tech world. Look at the population of young people today who have not been outside of Oakland, have not been to a ranch, have not been to a farm, have not experienced the daily toils of those who have to get up in the morning, go get the produce, go work in the fields, go out there and tend to the animals so that relaxed urban people can enjoy the leisure of going to Safeway or one of the markets there to pick something off the shelf and take home and then fuss about what they like and what they don't like. Being able to remember and recall that livelihood then depended on doing the work, picking yourself up each and every morning, going into the fields, going out and planting seeds, going out and picking fruits from the trees, going out picking vegetables from the ground, or going out and securing the meat that was needed for the table. That type of lifestyle, that is almost unheard of in terms of conversations with so many young people and much of the population today. No, I got it from the store. That's all I want to know. What's the old saying? Everybody wants a cheeseburger, but nobody wants to meet the cow. I'll leave it there.
Yeah. Like, what is the consequence collectively on us as a people to not understand that a seed produces a plant?
Yeah, I would love to speak more on how that is a massive, I think, problem, and it is a lack of understanding. And I think it's a privilege to even be taught and have the opportunity to see that information, because we're so isolated from our food and from, water cycles, soil, all these things people don't understand. And they don't understand how it affects them. A really big thing is when you have heirloom seeds, seeds that were passed down, through generations and cared for, or you have native plants that are wild growing plants that are fully adapted to the environment that they're living in. There's actually even greater nutrition and health that can be derived from that food. So it's the nutrient density of the food. And so much of our food system is built on convenience and appearance and constant availability, being able to eat fruits when they're not actually in season. And, people don't even have anything to compare that to, until you eat that same fruit fresh from the plant, or that same vegetable fresh, that was grown in living soil, healthy soil in a healthy place. you're not going to have any comparison. So if you're eating one that was shipped from another place, put in cold storage, forced to ripen, you know, in a gas chamber, not only is the flavor not as good, but it's actually not as healthy, and it's the food has less medicinal quality as food is medicine. So really, I see it as just an education and a lack of knowledge that people need to be exposed to that and be able to appreciate that and appreciate what, you know, how essential that is to get local food, food that's in season, be connected, know where your food is coming from. And then those things, whether you're coming out of it just because you want the best, healthiest food for yourself, or you're coming at it because you're wanting to work towards, you know, the abolition of the industrial agriculture systems that are built so much, I mean, entirely on stolen land, stolen labor, of Black and brown bodies, especially undocumented immigrants. These systems are not only destroying communities and culture, but also they're destroying the seeds that are essential for us. They're destroying the soil and the water cycles. And they just result in worse quality food. And I think people, that information has been so hidden that people literally are not aware and are unable to even compare it to any other scenario.
Mhm. Is anyone seeing the parallels between all of our different work? Is anyone else catching the metaphors? Is it just me? It can't be just me. Ah. Mm.
You know, one concept, what Professor D talked about, you know, we had one of the first gardens at the Oakland Community School. Larry said it was called Gardens in the Ghetto. And our science teacher, his name was Chris Dougherty from Texas. I think it was a 10 by 10 plot that he dug up. And the kids got into what Professor Steve was talking about, understanding the nuances of how to nurture organically grown food in the right type of soil, and the experience they had. 2 days later, it's not growing. Well, it takes time to nurture this. So, what do we need? We need the sunlight. We need so much of this. We don't need a whole lot of organic fertilizer. We want it to grow naturally. This is the process. This is the cycle. This is how we're going to work together in a team spirit. And then at the end result, the accomplishments, not only was the food harvested and parents were able to take some home, but it was also used in the Oakland Community School. We fed our children breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You know, so the idea here is what was actually right on point. Now, one way that we teaching what does eating really fresh fruit. And I just want to mention, I guess that's why in the wintertime when you get those grapes that are shipped in and they don't taste like grapes. The winter fruit from outside your area, and what you said was very important because that can be taught to people. But most important of all, when we're talking to youth, we have a concept on our classes called good health is real wealth. So the idea is we do a lot of times on different foods, fruits and vegetables. If they're organically grown, what vitamins and minerals. So imagine when you're dealing with children, getting them off of the McDonald's hamburgers and these fast food concept of destroying them, which they end up with diseases. They end up with what we call chronic diseases earlier, which routes them into the pharmaceutical industry, which we have someone who works with us in that in part of our vast network, getting that knowledge out. But imagine telling the children, what does this do for me? It has every vitamin and mineral. And then with the community collaboration, right? And all it takes is one ball player or somebody who's into sports or somebody that the children look up to and they're echoing, I eat these foods and it gives me every vitamin and mineral that I need. And also a concept of teaching them, like at the Oakland Community Learning Center in school, the kids were taught too to look at the ingredients when they go to the store. What's in these foods? Even when they buy the sodium content, the sugar content. By the time you got groceries, You've added what, 10,000 milligrams? 10,000 milligrams of sodium nitrate. I don't know. And then when they learned the math concept, looking at what they were putting into their bodies, which day after day, year after year, creates the ill health physically and mentally with our children. And as Professor Steve mentioned, we called it, it was more than field trips. We call it the window to the world. When children are exposed to hands-on, imagine that concept, being able to set up and you have those children out there and they see the end results, the hands-on, the nutritional benefit they're being informed about what it does for them. And the fact of one of the plans is that there's enough food is grown, all our local restaurants, all our, in particular, minority, people of color, ethnic minority group, and general businesses who are in the food, who produce food in their restaurants, would actually buy from that concept to support more input and use it in their restaurants at the same time, but also allow to bring on more youth into the arena. And we're going to say this, it's really difficult. You get great people, but they can only stay for a minute when it's the word volunteer comes up. I got this second job, I got to work. So the idea of the community and entity supporting that work through those other means, through your professional people. This is something, who can deny any child? I don't care what your politics are. We want them to have the best. We want them to be independent. Don't you want that too? So all these concepts are interconnected, where at the same time you're able to educate the children and you bring the families on board and they begin to take pride. Look what I produced. I want to do this, for the rest of my life. And it automatically takes them out of what we call the poison industry. 3 meals a day, McDonald's. I mean, you get a meal, what, $2? I mean, $2. And they're giving them a full meal. $2 for fries, Coke, and Junior Burger at some of these places. And this is all they know. Their parents, as was said, aren't educated to what it does not produce. So those kind of concepts can easily grab people. And then what you're doing is you're creating those, I call them tentacles, of bringing other people in. And I'm going to tell you something. There's not a parent out there or person would not say, thank you. I could not take my child to that location. You have them engaged in something that they love. They see beyond the misery. They see beyond what they think is hopelessness because they don't see any way out. But here you come and showing them, yes, there is. So this is what the Black Panther Party and, of course, the community, because I want you guys to be aware, we have what we call CWs, these people like Barbara Lee. They were community workers initially. I mean, Maya Angelou, who taught at the school 3 to 4 days a week, Rosa Parks, the list goes on. So all these people became community workers. So in your organization, that's what we said, we fight racism with solidarity and collaborative effort.
Absolutely. There seems to be this theme of like community work is about bringing us back to ourselves, bringing us back to who we were prior to colonization, envisioning together who we can become, and that happening at multiple levels via all of your work. If you could share, as we head toward the end of our time together, if you could share just a concrete tool in your toolkit. Many of us can intellectualize about this stuff, but bringing it down onto the ground for people who are like, well, where do I get started? What do I do? Right? If we could share the tools that we have from the perspective of PRISMED, from the perspective of the Black Panther Party, and from the perspective of Symbiont, what are the tools that we can actually bring into our lives to actually live and breathe some of these ideas?
Stephanie, let me start a little bit with what I can see and what I've learned. One thing that comes to the forefront is that all of our fields, all of our disciplines, all of our experience, they're all interconnected. all of our experiences. One does not have priority over another for the duration of whatever is needed. We're going to need the science, either social science or natural and physical science from one discipline in order to get something done in the social field. They are not separate, they're not distinct, they are connected. We're going to need something from each. In order to work together, we're going to need something from each of us. And we each, not one of us, have all the skills that are necessary. But among us, we have the certain tools, the certain knowledge and understanding. So if we touch the right question, have the right vision or appropriate vision, then we can pull those tools so that we can pull from the agriculture field, we can pull from the business field, we can pull from the pure science field, we can pull from the education field, so that we can come up with the question for a particular problem. We can find a method by combining those skills, a method that will address a particular problem, not every problem, a particular problem. And then after we walk that road to solving one issue, then we come together again to see collectively which of our experiences, which body of knowledge among us suits this question, this problem, this issue. And we pool again so that no one issue, no skill, no one discipline is left alone saying, oh, we don't need that. We will need every discipline, as we need language right now just to communicate. Without that facility, we wouldn't be having this conversation without the discipline of language. Okay, so we're bringing the skills that are necessary at one time. It highlights others, and all the others, we find a place for those skills so that we can put our question on the table, put our problem in front of us, and then how do we address this? What steps do we take? There's no one approach, because the one approach may not solve the question that we are asking. It may not solve the problem that we are prepared to tackle. So if the door is closed, okay, this is the only way we can do this. Oh, okay. So soon as that's being said, a lot of people are going to be turned away. They do not want to participate. Oh, I'm not useful. I don't have anything to say. I'm just a fifth wheel here at the table. But people find there's a place for you too. There's a place for you. You can do this. Bring something to the table to help fill out this puzzle, to help complete this equation, so to say. So we can balance it. How do we get from question to solution? How do we get from problem to conclusion? How do we do that? And we can only do that collectively.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. Other thoughts?
I was just like taking in this conversation over this last hour and a half, really thinking about collaboration and what that looks like. And I just wanted to share, as we're moving towards this movement of what land back looks like, what bringing in Indigenous, traditional, ecological, and cultural knowledge looks like to repair our relationship with land and to repair our relationship with each other, intercommunal, intercommunity. I think a lot about the different threads of connection where I have to move into collaboration with community. And I guess I just want to give a little background. So I love speaking with youth and with their parents and with elders, and taking the knowledge from our elders of what they've experienced and matching and seeing where the points of connection are with what youth want in their future. And that has allowed me to develop like a vision for land projects, for placemaking projects. And then we go back to those communities, we bring them together, we make sure that we're in alignment with what people are asking for, what they want to see in the future, and just continue to build that vision. And we're able to bring together an intergenerational group of folks to co-create a community garden. And so we have that knowledge system that is carried through history from ancestors to elders to youth. And then we also have the visions of what people are looking for and seeking for in the future, and matching those in a land project. And so that is an ongoing iterative process. It's something that doesn't change. You keep connecting, you keep coming back, you keep making sure that you're in alignment. And so we're like 4 years into a land project like that. It involves seed saving. It involves collaboration, not just locally, which is very important, but it also, we're drawing in tribal viewpoints and collaboration. So we have like a seed saving project with a few different tribes in this area, and also in the Midwest of like, we're growing some food, we're saving all of that seed, except a little bit for next year, and then we're sending it back because they're trying to like restore their seed bank. So we're doing that work. We're making sure that we are well resourced with other local orgs that are doing the same work. So bringing people together and figuring out like, what are we all hoping for? How can we share? Where are the points of connection? And just having those regular touch-ins, building relationship. When I see people doing the same things in different spaces, I'm like, okay, you're doing that in the Black community, you're doing that in the Native community. How can we create spaces that feel connecting so that people have those natural meetings with each other? So just bringing people together with the same idea of what they're doing, what they want to do, and introducing them and allowing them to have the conversation. I love those spaces because it feels like this creative connection can come naturally. And then they take it where it needs to go, which is typically then building a relationship and doing work down the road. And being able to provide that in a context specifically at Prismid, in a context of rest, in a context of healing, in a context of nurturing people as they're so used to being out in the world, like defenses up or gear on to be protective and taking care of community and doing all of this incredible work. And then they get to come here and just be relaxed and be in an environment of safety, or as much safety as we can provide, for each other, with each other, which is not 100%. But yeah, and it feels so important. And I've found a lot of just beauty in that, and seeing the connections that are intergenerational, that are intercultural, that have the right conditions or the right environment, or moving towards the right environment or the right conditions to continue that collaboration. So yeah, I'm just happy to be here and to hear about how other people are doing that and share what we're doing.
I just want to mention one thing in terms of the collective attitude that I had read it one time back in the 70s about how the Cuban population was developing during the early days of Fidel Castro, and it told about the communities that were building outside of Havana that didn't have access to all of the whatever services were available there. That in one of the communities or in some of the close by communities. There was an electrician here, a construction person here. There was a doctor or nurse here. There were teachers here. There were medical people here. There were people who had other skills that were necessary to the integrity of those small areas. And they could ask each other and would ask each other, I can do this. I had this skill. I said, okay, I can do this for you. So they were able to interchange and interconnect their skills and build that sense of family, that sense of connectedness, because they all understood they had to rely on each other for their collective survival. Those type of skills, once they come into the larger industrialized and technological areas of the inner cities, those skills, those social skills, those basic skills that we need to interact as human beings, many of those skills are drained from us because we're looking at that project, we're looking at that larger social project that is based on produce for whatever personal wealth or social wealth there is available. When we forget those basic skills of using our abilities to come together and work with each other for the betterment of the whole group that we live with.
Very quickly, I wanted to give you guys a good example. We're working with a group of brothers and sisters of all persuasions from Brazil. One of them is here on loan to UC Berkeley in their technology department, and they have a number of Colombos which originated in the 17th century in Brazil. Africans who escaped slavery and they established self-sustaining communities in very remote areas. And echo what Professor Steve was talking about, they are places that are resistant against racism, culture, race, and environmental destruction. Well, part of what we did at the Afram Museum, we have these organic seed banks, and they took a ton of those seeds and had planted them in Colombos all over in Brazil. One of the other issues they had was they have no what we call technology, Wi-Fi or internet. So they created their own, what they call it the tree spot. And I was teasing them, you got the tree, but you need the whole forest to set it up. So imagine the relationship, and they want to establish one in a relationship here in Oakland. And I don't see why they wouldn't want to establish that relationship in Portland. But the idea of the very thing that Professor Steve is talking about and the connection that we have with them is a testament to, they grow their own food. They our politics are in line, of course, with the Black Panther Party when they initially contacted us. And of course, they're trying to get us down there, but that may be a minute coming down there. But I just want to mention this, and there's more information behind that, but I just want to mention it to everybody that this is what is happening. As we said earlier, how people are coming to the table from all over and see that collaborative vision of the same thing. So people are feeling the same effect all over the world is basically what I want to say. I know we're getting close to that time, so I want to end on that note.
Well, yeah, the other answers, I can't really improve on anything that's already been said. The things that I know from my own experience, because I'm so focused on trying to help people that are really beginners for gardening or just found out about the value of a native plant or something. And if you're starting out, I guess my very concrete kind of measuring stick that I would encourage is, and especially even speaking as a company that sells these products, I would just say always question anything that's being sold, any product that's being made and distributed for profit, because when you're starting out, it may be, it's important to rely on other people's expertise. But, if you're like, oh, I want to save the environment, I'm going to buy these seeds on Amazon. It's like, question that you might be, taking one step forward, two steps back by supporting that industrial industry. So just really being grounded and saying if you can do it for free, if you can source it for free in your neighborhood, if you can trade it or share it or do a DIY version of whatever you're doing, if you can just scrounge it together with your friends or your family or community, you might not feel good and you might say, oh, these raised beds don't look the way they do on the, on TV, but it is, if you're actually trying to help, then what you've done is more helpful. So I would say be very proud if you can do it just for free, basically, and always question if it's being sold to you.
I'm loving, again, the themes that I'm hearing across panelists around the idea that we all belong in this movement. We all have a place here. Your existence is resistance. And as we share skills and knowledge together, we become stronger collectively. We are coming toward the end of our time together. Brianna, how do you feel about wrapping us up? How's your internet connection doing?
We'll give it a go. We'll hope the internet is with us. This has been such a powerful and important conversation. I'm just so grateful for all of you for taking the time out of your days to come here to engage in this. I'm excited that it's going to be online for people to engage with later. And yeah, just so super grateful. Thank you to our interpreters again. Thank you to our captioner. And we're really excited to be again in community with you all. There's so many things as I develop programming for the next year, there's so many things you're talking about that I'm so excited to reach out again and collaborate on. So be looking out for an email from me. But
yeah, Ren, we've got a regenerative agriculture and first foods project that you would be very interested in.
Yes. Yeah. So very excited. Thank you again. For everyone else, we're gonna go ahead and post photos, bios, and any kind of social media handles and websites and stuff for folks in the event on Facebook, so folks can continue to engage with you all and find you in the work. So thank you all. I hope you have a great rest of your weekend and you find some time to rest. And we'll be in touch soon.
Absolutely. Thank you for the gift of your stories.